Hello everyone and welcome to today's session on the CSAE 2016 Honors and Awards Program. I'm very pleased to welcome you today. My name is Danielle Lamotte and I'm the Director of Education at CSAE. Also joining me today is Maureen Healy. She's the Vice President of the Downtown Vancouver Business Improvement Association, and she's also a member of the CSAE Honors and Awards Committee. Hi Maureen.
Hi.
So just before we get started, a couple of notes on how today's webinar works. You can ask questions, you the attendees, can ask questions throughout the webinar by using the question panel, which you'll see on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll be pausing here and there throughout the webinar to address your questions, so go ahead and type them in as they occur to you, and we'll take some breaks and address those as we go through. We do have a few handouts also available in the handouts panel, also on the right-hand side of your screen, and Maureen will refer to those in the latter half of the webinar. So we're going to get started, and Maureen, can you just hit that slide over? You just want to make sure you click on PowerPoint again.
Oh, show my screen. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay, perfect. So we're just going to start. The very first part of the webinar will deal with the Leadership Awards, which have not changed this year. So they're the same awards that were available for the past few years. And then after that, Maureen's going to get started on the Awards of Distinction, which are brand new this year. And it's a very exciting program. She's going to talk about the benefits of entering and how amazing it is to win, and the eligibility and submission process, what's required to include in your entry, how to make an award-winning entry, and then, as I referred to the handouts and some other additional resources that you can use while preparing your entry.
I'm clicking, but it's not going.
Just click back on PowerPoint. Sometimes it gets frozen in GoToWebinar. Still not?
No.
Okay, well, that's odd. Okay, I'm going to take over the screen then, Maureen.
Okay, sure.
Okay. Okay, so the Leadership Awards include the Pinnacle Award, which is for our executive members, the Greiner Award, which is for business members, the Honorary Award of Excellence, which is for either, and the Donna Mary Shaw Award, which is a mentoring and award that recognizes young people in the industry, and that's also for both executive or business members. And you can find all of the unique details about each of these awards on our website under the About Us section, csae.com, About Us, and then in the Honors and Awards section. And the leadership, this is last year's Honorary Award of Excellence winner, Bob Ramsey, and our former chair, Maura McLaren. So you get to go up on stage, and it really recognizes leadership in the not-for-profit and association sector. And the awards, you basically include a nominee in the nominee information, and you are able to self-nominate. So if you think you've done some great things for our industry, don't hesitate. Go ahead and nominate yourself. You include the record of achievements, a current CV, letters of support and testimonials, and a narrative for why that person should win. And as I mentioned, all of the awards application forms are on our website. So feel free to go and check that out. But I am going to move it on into the Awards of Distinction and let Maureen take over, because this is lots of significant changes.
Great, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Well, morning for me, afternoon for you. So I guess, Danielle, I'll just have to keep saying next annoyingly if you want mind moving the slides along. Okay, thanks. Thanks, everybody. As Danielle mentioned, I was on the awards committee, so hence why I'm doing the presentation today. Also been involved for many years with many other awards programs through different associations, both entering awards, winning awards, judging awards, as well as helping teach people how to enter awards. Also have my CAE, which is one of the reasons that drew me to this awards program, because we want to make some changes in the program, which you'll see now. And one of our goals was to really raise the bar on the profession and really highlight how we can be and are being strategic. So we wanted to create a consistent evaluation of our work. So that's why we decided to tie it into the CAE program, because that's where our profession is grounded within those competencies. So we thought it made sense for that. And we'll talk about it, and you'll see how it ties in as we go forward. So there's lots of new aspects, so I'll talk about them as we get to each section, but one of the ones I'll mention here relates to the eligibility. So we know that in the real world, you don't start a program on January 1st and finish December 31st. So you'll see that any program you've done as of January 2014 up until the date of submission is eligible. So what that means is if you had a program, let's say a government relations program that you've been doing for 3 years, but you do something specific that's measurable and tangible and different or enhanced during that eligibility time, then you should enter that. So the program may be part of something larger, but you're entering that particular piece of the pie during that time. And again, you can also have something like a website where you've had it for years, but let's say within that eligibility time, you've decided to move, let's say, your membership sign up or your membership recruitment form from something people had to fax to now you do it online. And you can measure the impact of that, and you've moved it online. So that's the project you might have done, but the website's not new itself. And you can also, if you've done work in 2013 but didn't win an award, and you've made some changes, maybe done something, enhanced something, and it fits within this timeline, you can also enter it. And just FYI, you have to have at least one CSAE member on your staff to enter. Next. So in terms of the categories, I won't go through each of them. These are detailed on the website and I think in the handouts there, but needless to say, I can't remember now, I think it's 46 competencies with the CAE, but they fall into these 6 different categories. And the beauty of this program is that if and when those CAE competencies may evolve and change, we can change the program with it. And needless to say, with 46 competencies and 6 different categories, there is a spot now for every program. So you cannot say that there's a program, yours doesn't fit. There is a spot for every program. Next. So if you've entered an awards program before, I don't need to upsell you on the benefits of doing it, but if you've never entered, let me upsell you on the benefits. So many reasons to enter an awards program, and you can see them all here. So from the personal benchmark point of view, this is great, especially if you work alone. If you're a one-person shop or a one- or two-person shop, and you kind of wonder, you know, are you hitting the mark? Are you doing best practice or current practice? This is a great way to find that out and be recognized for that. Using this approach, and I'll talk about the template and the approach for the program, is also going to give you the framework you need to work strategically, whether or not you enter the awards or not. So I think that's going to move your level of practice up to a different level. It's also third-party endorsement. Who doesn't like to be recognized by external third parties, whether it's in your industry, whether it's related to a specific program? It gives you that best practice stature. And of course, there's always opportunity for publicity, marketing, if you're always looking for ways to promote yourself or tie it into something else you're doing. Think of news releases, LinkedIn updates, speaking opportunities, lots of ways to basically work the heck out of it once you actually win an award. And it's also inspiring, and I would say for your team, so it might be inspiring for your industry or your city or your town, but it's also inspiring for your team. It's a great team builder, especially if it's a project that a lot of people have been involved with. And it's a great opportunity for leadership within your organization, whether that be somebody junior or at the top. And it also enhances the credibility, both with the leaders in your organization. So if you are the ED, enhances it with your board, potentially your clients or members. But it's also a great opportunity for somebody that's maybe more junior in your organization to, for them to get some credibility and kind of move up the ladder a bit with the awards. And whether or not you win, and I know people like to win, but people actually, I've found over other awards programs, people actually like to get really good feedback to help them do a better job entering the next time, and you will get that with this awards program. You'll get a sheet that gives you your marks, but it'll also give you what your strengths were and where you can improve for next time, which will lead to growth, obviously. And of course, it's a career booster. Who doesn't want to say award-winning organization or award-winning practitioner? So whether that's for your resume or for your consultant, who doesn't like that? And at the end of the day, hardware. we've got hardware sitting in the front of our office, and it's always a good conversation starter. It's great for the office decor. Everybody loves hardware. Next. So in terms of eligibility and what's different, the basic piece that's different is the rigor. So what you'll find in this is a real strategic approach, that measurement is strongly valued, and there's a real connection to the bottom line, the organization's bottom line. So for some, this is recognition for work you've already been doing strategically, and this is a way to actually recognize it. For others, as I mentioned before, this is a template for how to work more strategically, more thoughtfully, and more measurably. And as I said, whether you enter or not, and oftentimes people will do a webinar like this, and they may not have a project. You really have to have a project that's kind of ready to go, or you're just finishing it up to make it eligible and to have all the pieces together that you need. But whether or not you enter this year, now you can start to think about the process and the template and the framework you can use for entering for the following years, which is always a good thing. And as I mentioned, some years here you have good projects that are well tracked, and other years you don't. So if this year you don't have a project, don't sweat it, but now you know what you're looking for going forward, and use this template to help create what you'll actually need the next time you want to enter. So in a nutshell, what's new this year is you need to tell a story with enough depth and detail that hits all the marks that we'll talk about as we go through. And then you're going to provide some work samples that are proof points to the story. Those are the two pieces. You're going to tell a story within 4 pages, and then you're going to have work samples that are going to prove the things, or supplement or complement or showcase what you've talked about. And big highlight is no binders. You do not need to put binders together in any way, shape, or form, which is good for both the judges as well as you for mailing and sending things in. So it's all by email and by PDF.
And Maureen, we do have a question before we move on to the next slide. So just one of our audience members has their association created a new mission, vision, values, and a three-year strategic plan in 2015. So now they're wondering, should they submit this year while halfway through the process, or would they be better to submit with all of their evaluation results in next year? What would the recommendation be?
I guess I'm going to say maybe wait till the end of the presentation, the webinar, to see if you think it'll meet the criteria. At the end of the day, if that was part one of the work you were going to do, is actually getting people on board in the engagement piece, and the engagement itself was the work you were going to do, and you've been able to measure that engagement, I would say yes, enter that piece of the pie. You don't need to wait till the whole thing is done. But then when you've done the second piece, which is maybe you need to launch it, you need to get buy-in from your members or employees, that could be a part two. So I would say yes, if you meet the criteria that we're going to talk about, you can certainly enter that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So I just want to show this for you, this kind of behind the scenes, and you'll actually see in one of the handouts there, it's in the Excel document, it's the Awards of Distinction evaluation. That's the actual form that the judges are going to use. So I want you to see that so you can be using that as a bit of a benchmark as you go through your submission. But this is the scale that the judges are using. So it's based on another awards program that's highly successful, an international program. So what you'll notice is the judges won't be starting from 0 and you know, climbing their way up to a 1, 2, or 3 with your submission. They're going in with a 4. So they're going to assume that you're a competent, professional practitioner. So they're going to start you at a 4. And they're going to mark up or down from the 4, and that's what we're going to talk about, this kind of marking up or down, or you know, what gets you more points, what gets you less points. So again, this is where the more strategic and rigorous you are, the higher the marks. Where you have missing elements or not enough depth, you're going to go down from the 4. So just a kind of FYI in the back of the scene, in the back of the picture. Move on. And the next one is who wins, and you can see how this grading works. So entries are scored 50% on the work plan and 50% on the work samples. Again, you'll see that on the Excel document. So again, they're equally beneficial, but it starts with that work plan. So there are no tricks, there are no hidden answers, as you'll be able to see when you open it up later, the judging form. The questions that you're going to look at and ask yourself before you submit the entry are the questions that the judges are actually going to be asking themselves as well. So you can see the marks there. If it meets the criteria, it's an award of merit at 5.25, which is actually hard to get out of a 7, and an award of excellence is 5.75, so that really exceeds the criteria. And what's new this year is that the entries are being judged against the criteria, so against that 7-point scale. So there can be multiple winners or there can be no winners in any category. So whether if you have $1 million budget, you have a $5 budget, you're doing a very similar program or very different programs, if you meet the criteria, you can win an award. But if nobody enters in a category or nobody meets the criteria in a category, no award will be given out in that category. And as I mentioned, there's lots of opportunity for feedback and growth, and that's where when we recruit the judges, so the CAEs on the call, this is your first shout out for we'll be recruiting judges. This is where you'll get the feedback that will explain your marks and teach you how you can do better if you weren't an award winner. So that's kind of setting the stage. So let's move on to the work plan itself. And this is the template. If nothing else, if you walk away with this template, this is how we're going to walk through the work, and hopefully this is how you're doing your work in some way, shape, or form like this. This is the bread and butter, the work plan. So when I'm judging, for example, I won't even look at the work sample until I've really read thoroughly and judged fully the work plan itself. This is the story and the narrative, and the rest is really meant to supplement that. So think about that as you're working on the plan. Spend the most amount of time here on the work plan itself. Let's move on. So we're going to go into depth here on each of the sections. Again, this is the real meat of what you want to do. And think about it that each section is equally important. So as you're going through, if you don't think you can do justice to each section, think about if this is the right project and if this is the year that you have a project that's worthy of entering. If not, I would say no, but don't be discouraged by that. Again, think about it for next year. But if yes, if you can do justice to each of these sections, you have enough depth and rigor and you've completed the work already, I would say do it. And it really starts with this question, the need or opportunity, with the why. So you need to answer the question here, why this project and why now? In other words, if this project didn't happen, what might be different in your organization? So I'm going to give you 2 examples, and because we're not face-to-face, can't really hand it out, but I'll read it to you. And these aren't fully fleshed out needs or opportunities, but you'll get the gist of it. So sample 1 is we're a professional development association for engineers in the province of Nova Scotia. Our organization's website was created 5 years ago. It's become out of date. Our communication team decided we needed to update it. That's your sample 1. Sample 2. Our organization is one of 2 in our province providing professional development for engineers. Both have about 500 members. 6 months previous, our competitor updated its online presence and has increased its membership by 25%. Our membership has dropped 10% in the same time frame. Exit interviews with those members told us our competitor was luring our members due to the ease of online registration and their new online education program, which we don't have. To lessen the competitive gap, to regain our lost membership, and to build up our membership base, we embarked on a project to update our website. Hopefully you can see the difference between the 2. One has research attached to it, one is specific to the bottom line of that organization and has some real depth and rigor to it and real strategic thought. So as a judge, I'm thinking, I get it. Of course you have to update that website, maybe among other things. The other one is a bit kind of loose, and I would call light or top of the waves. It's people saying, well, maybe we should do this, but you need to have some more rigor there. So in this section, if you have formal research or any kind of research, whether it's original or third party, it's going to boost your marks and it's going to boost the story you're trying to tell and really set the context. So for example, you don't even need to do the research yourself. So let's say you're an organization and you want to introduce a smoking cessation program within your organization. You don't need to do the research to know whether smoking cessation programs are successful. Somebody like the Canadian Cancer Society already has that work. You just need to go and find it and reference it and use it as research to help bolster your program or the reasons that you actually want to do it. So don't think if you haven't done original research, your program isn't worthy. You've probably done some stuff. You maybe just haven't written down, but you've done some exploration of what's happening in the marketplace. Or you know the market and you know your competitors, but maybe you haven't written it down. And don't forget in this section where you start to lay out the need or opportunity, the judges don't know your association. So you need to include some context setting paragraph. You know, the who, what, where, when, why. You know, if you're that engineering firm, so what? How many members? Do people pay? You know, are they all located in the same area? Do they meet occasionally? Do they meet every month? Those sorts of things. Set the context and give me the framework as the judge as to who and what your organization is. So that's the first piece, being able to tell that. In the sample that we've provided, I think it's called the CSAE Awards of Distinction Work Plan Example, and full disclosure, it's mine from my organization, but you'll see of the 4 pages I've spent, I think a full page doing the business need and opportunity. It's setting the context, it's building the story, it's adding the layers on as to why it was important to do this project at that time. So let's move us on to the goals and objectives. Again, I like to say, oh, this is the most important section, but they all really are equally important. So I just want to, for the sake of this program, differentiate between a goal and an objective. So in this case, you want to include one goal. So a goal in this case should be visionary. It should be aspirational. It should be out of reach. It should be unmeasurable. It should be directional. A simple one line. Should do. So think of, in the province of BC, they have a tagline, you could call it a goal, and that's BC is the best place on earth. Well, you could never measure that, and who would know if what even is best place? But it's aspirational. It makes you think, oh, I want to go in that direction, be the best place on earth. Or I think back in 2010 with the Olympics, I think their goal or mission was that they wanted to touch every Canadian's heart. Well, of course, you could never measure that, but it's aspirational and inspirational. And with the Engineering Association example, the made-up one I gave, maybe that one is that association wanted to be the association of choice for engineers in Nova Scotia. Again, a bit lofty, but that's okay for the goal. But the objectives then are the measurable pieces you want to include. And the difference here is you want to differentiate between outputs and outcomes. So outputs are what I would say are your job, the things you're going to do. So things like publish the annual report on time and on budget. I would suggest don't include that in the objectives. Include that in the implementation, because I would hope that you want to publish the annual report on time and on budget, but that's really your job. Let's say you want to meet with every city councillor to share your association's point of view on a new tax proposal the city was putting forth. Meeting with every city councillor is on your to-do list. That's the work that you need to do. It's not an objective. Or if you want to make the new website more visually appealing, that's the job you're going to do. I'd suggest that's not an objective. What you're looking for in the objectives are outcomes. So you're looking for behavior shifts in your target audience, and that needs to be tied back to the audience, which we're going to talk about shortly. So you want to ask yourself the question, what did you get your audience to start doing, to stop doing, or to keep doing? So if we go back to the example of the city councillors, meeting with every city councillor to share your association's point of view on the tax proposal, not being an objective, but listen to it written this way. At least 50% of city councillors agree to publicly support the association's tax proposal. Or when surveyed, and I'm thinking now about the website one, or when surveyed, 75% of website users say they'll use the website more because it's visually appealing. So hopefully you can see the difference between the two. One is output, your job, which you should take full credit for, but not in this section, and the other is behavior shifts. Start doing something, stop doing something, keep doing something. And in this area, just include one to three objectives max, because you'll want to tie it specifically to your audience, which we're going to talk about. And if you have too many objectives, you'll never be able to tell the story, first of all, in 4 pages, or kind of keep it all straight. So 1 to 3. And there we go. Look at this fancy graphic. So this is a good reminder. At the end of the day, all your points in the objective sections need to be SMART. So if you're not familiar with this, it's specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, or realistic, and time-based. So meaning specific. So you want to say who, how many, when, really get into the nitty-gritty. And measurable. Everything is measurable. So numbers, numbers, numbers. So even things like knowledge level, you can measure that. The level of recall of a key message of your CEO at an annual general meeting, that is measurable. If you need to rank or understand how motivated your employees or your members might be to do something, that is measurable. But you have to ask them, and then you can get the measurement. But everything is measurable. And of course, in terms of being attainable, is it realistic? Can you actually do it? Are you doing something that's so far-fetched that it's not really realistic, you can't really do it? And it's not really relevant to the business case that you've made in that first section. And the timing, of course, you want to be very specific. So within 6 months, 2 weeks after the meeting, you want people to start to use that website, within the first week or whatever it may be. So again, this is a bit of a filter for you when you're doing those objectives. Are they SMART? And again, all the stuff I'm talking about is actually in your other handout called the Marks of a Winner Evaluator Guide. So again, this is what judges are going to be using to evaluate your submission. So this is a bit of pulling the curtain back so you can see exactly what they're going to be using. Again, there are no tricks. You can use that same document. So let's move on to the audience section. So most projects, I'm sure all the work we all do has many audiences, but for the sake of this entry, just include one. And I know you're going to say, yeah, but just include one, maybe reference a secondary one, but just one. The reason is you won't be able to tell the whole story within the 4 pages, and you won't be able to list as many objectives as you may need to related to each audience. So I always tell people, so imagine your whole project, let's say you did a whole rebranding for your organization. That's a pie that's this big. So imagine my arms are doing this big. But for the sake of the entry, just tell a slice of the pie. So let's say you did that whole rebranding exercise, and part of it was launching it internally to your staff. Just tell that piece of the story. There is another piece of the story which you can put in one line, but just tell that piece of the story. Try and keep it simple. So for example, in the Engineering Association, the one I made up in Nova Scotia, and the website project, so in this section, who is the audience? Is it all the members? Is it the lapsed members, or the ones that they've lost to their competitor? Is it the members that defected to the competitor? At the end of the day, for argument's sake, I'm going to suggest it's the current members whose membership is about to expire, because they've seen now their friends and their colleagues being wooed by the other organization. So I'm going to suggest, for this sake, not knowing anything else about that made-up story, that it's the current members whose membership is about to expire. And you know who those are. You can pull them up in your database. And let's say probably board members are a secondary audience, or you might have a membership committee. You might include them as a secondary, because let's say your board, you need to get them on board with this project you might be doing about the website update. Or it might be the membership committee, or you might have a website committee or a marketing communication. So they might be a secondary audience, but I wouldn't spend a lot of time on them. But it's not enough just to say current members whose membership is about to expire is our audience. You need to drill down, so you need to tell us more. So what's the average number of years that they've been members? Do they have an engineering specialization? Does that even matter in this context? Are they men or women? Are they all geographically located in the same area or different areas? What services do those members use? How often? What time of year? The bottom line is you want to match the audience to the approach of the project. So I always think of the narrative that you're going to tell in a award submission as pulling a string, and the string needs to pull right from that need or opportunity right through to the very end. So there has to be connecting dots between them all. Let's move on to the next section. So this is the implementation. So now that you've kind of set the stage, you've done the strategic thinking, you've targeted who you're going to be doing the project to, this is the doing part. So it's kind of 2 parts. I don't think we've written it quite like that, but there's both the strategic thinking, and then there's the tactical. So for example, in the one that was mentioned before, let's say you're creating a new vision and mission for your association. So you're going to explain that that was based on research with your members. Let's say your mission didn't fit with what they needed, so that you're telling this story in the need or opportunity. Your audience for the process of creating the mission, let's say for argument's sake, was your board of directors, right? You need to get them on board at the very beginning. So you're going to tell the story about them as your audience. And one of your objectives is, let's say, to have all 12 of your board members participate in a 3-part process to develop the new mission over a 3-month period. And then you're going to talk about your audiences. You're going to describe the board, kind of their makeup, their tenure, their backgrounds, the support for a new mission going into the process. Was anybody opposed to that? Were people all on board? So you've set that whole stage. Now you're going to talk about the thinking, how to develop the process, who to include, who not to include, when are you going to do certain things. So there's certain timelines that you needed to meet because, let's say, an AGM was coming up or you were at the end of a 5-year mandate for your strategic plan. So what's the big picture thinking? Why, when, who, those sorts of things. And which options did you weigh? So again, this is the stuff that goes on in our heads and we talk about around our senior management tables, but you may not have written down. So this is the strategic part. And if we want to go to the next slide, which is a continuation of the implementation, this is now the tactical part. So who did what in the project? Did you have volunteers? Was it all staff driven? Did you hire a consultant? It's assumed you're not doing all the work for any of these projects, that you're bringing other people in. So you need to describe, this is the nitty-gritty part. This is when you're going to talk about timelines. You're going to talk about budget, and that's something you must include. People often forget to include that, but you have to include the budget. It's in the call for entries there. And this is where you want to talk about challenges. So let's say, did you have a change in staffing while you were going through this project? Was the budget cut? Was there some slow decision making that was dragging the process down for you? Did you have a crisis that came up? And then talk about how you overcame the challenge. Again, this is you showcasing yourself and your association, your organization, being strategic and thinking strategically. And anything you can't include here. So let's say you have a communication plan. So let's say you were going to roll out this new vision and mission, and you have a full communication plan. That might be 5 or 6 pages developed by your communication team. Well, you obviously can't include it here in this 4-page work plan, but you'll include it in your work sample. So you'll reference it here. You might put the highlights. You know, our timeline was launch the communication plan February, March. And then you'll put see Appendix A. And that's where you'll put that full communication plan. Or let's say you had an Excel spreadsheet that had a full timeline that broke down who did what by when, one of those kind of matrices that lays out who's going to do what. You obviously can't include it here, but you can reference the timing and then include it as the work sample. Also think about, let's say you did a membership survey related to the mission. I kind of referenced that, made a point that let's say you went out to your members and they said, it's not really resonating for us. You probably have an executive summary of that research that you did. So give us the highlights in the work plan, but that include the actual, let's say it's a 4-page executive summary, or it's 3 questions, the results of the 3 questions you might have asked. Include that in the sample. And this is where you can also reference anything like third-party research or the budget breakdown, or let's say you did a PowerPoint presentation to sell your board on the idea of doing a new mission, a vision. You did a new branding book. You had photos of the event. All these sorts of things that showcase and prove what you've just mentioned in your work plan, you can include in the work sample, but reference them here in the implementation section. Next. And last but not least, and this is the full, this is now you're pulling the string right through the whole story, and this is the results. And the simplest way to do this one is, so imagine now thinking back to your objective section, you have 3. 1, 2, 3, very simple. I would literally just restate your objective here. So objective number 1, have 12 of our board members attend a 3-part, mission creation process, and then put result and put whatever it is there. So for example, the one I just did, the 12 members are engaged in a 3-part process over 3 months. So let's say the result was 11 board members were engaged in 3 parts over 6 months. Or another example is, let's say you've done something related to your website and 85% of current members rate the new website as relevant to their daily work. Or when surveyed, 70% of members rate the website relevant. Sorry, let me say that again. So let's say your objective was 85% of current members rate the new website as relevant to their daily work, back to the example of creating the new website. And your result was, when surveyed, 70% of members rate the website relevant, which means you have work to do. Your goal was 85%, you got 70. At the end of the day, I wouldn't worry whether you hit the target, it's whether you measured against the target. That's really the key, because at the end of the day, we're not all going to hit it out of the park. Some you'll excel, some there'll be lots of reasons, and you're going to mention in that challenge section, maybe there was some challenge and you couldn't do all you need to do, let's say, on the website. So it wasn't quite as visually appealing as you needed it to be. As long as you set the target and measure against it, that really is the key. And this is where you want to include numbers, as I mentioned before. Numbers, numbers, numbers. Anecdotal, nice, but it's not really what we're looking for. And this is where you want to include measuring the behavior shifts. So this is what did you get people to start doing, stop doing, or keep doing? And you really want to use the structure. So the idea of the anecdotal, it might be nice that your board chair thought the annual report looked great, the best one ever, but there's no real structure or rigor or context for that. So you might include that at the end, but I never even look at that as a judge. I'm looking for what was your target and did you measure against it? And you really want to make it easy for judges to evaluate by measuring against those targets. So again, relist the target itself or the objective and then the measurement underneath. And this is where you can also include maybe how you did it. So if you haven't talked about in the implementation section how you were going to do that measurement, this is where you would talk about we did a survey, you know, of our 500 members, 300 responded to the survey, the result was 70% thought the website was relevant, that sort of thing. Often people include data here because they have some data and they're so excited that they have data, but it's not really relevant to the objectives. So again, keep it simple, just tell a slice of the story, and just include the data that connects directly to the objectives that you're setting. If you want to tell a different slice of the pie, do a different work plan for that one. So that's a very quick run through of the work plan itself. So let's move to the work sample, and I won't spend as much time here. But the work sample at the end of the day should really prove or illustrate the work plan. That's all it's meant to do. So as I mentioned before, spend the most time on the work plan and then insert the samples as proof points. And in the example that's included there, you'll see it. I simply put see Appendix A in brackets. And then as a judge, I know they're going to flip to, imagine it's a binder, or it's not really a binder, but it's an online binder. They're going to flip to Appendix A in the PDF, which might be the research that I reference in that need or opportunity section. So for example, in the association that's creating the new vision and mission, and let's say you note that there's a membership survey that discovered that disconnect to the current mission. So as I mentioned before, you're going to include the summary of that survey or that question, and then you're going to reference the appendix. So let's say the challenge, as I mentioned before, was selling the need for a new mission to the board, and you did that PowerPoint presentation. This is when you're going to reference it here. So we did a PowerPoint presentation to the board. People walked out of there. All 12 were committed to moving forward with the process. See Appendix B. That's the presentation. This is you showing the judges all the work that you're doing, all the pieces that it takes to get this project done. So let's say in that engineering association website example, let's say you had 2 sample designs that you beta tested with a focus group. Include the screenshots and the survey feedback for those 2 samples that you included. So you might reference it in the work plan itself and then put see Appendix C. And as I mentioned, so imagine them kind of flipping back and forth. So if you say, you can't just say our research showed that members didn't relate to the vision. I'm going to say, really? You got to prove that to me. And this is also where you can include if you're doing something, let's say an event or a fundraiser, or you're doing some media relations or government relations. You don't want to include every media clipping because that's just a lot of PDF space taken up. But hopefully you'll do an analysis of that media. So let's say you wanted to get, you know, your key message in at least 50% of the coverage that you got. You can include that analysis, but maybe 1 or 2 sample stories to show how the, let's say, the issue or the crisis or whatever it was played out. But just do some summaries of each of the pieces, and again, do the reference to see Appendix A, B, or C. Let's move on. So a bit of do's and don'ts and where people kind of fall off the rails. As I mentioned before, all sections have to be robust, so they have to have enough depth to tell the story in a strategic way, but you have to do it within the 4-page work plan, and therein lies the challenge. So I would suggest if you're writing it, I would kind of do the brain dump. So if it's a 6-page first kick at the can brain dump, put it all on paper, and then you can edit from there. I wouldn't worry about the 4-page if you're starting the process of writing it, but at the end of the day, it can only be 4 pages. And the idea being that then there's a level playing field. So we're all, as a judge or an entrant, we all have the same amount of information that we're submitting. And again, as I mentioned, you need to make that connection between each of the sections. So for the first year, Danielle and I talked about the category. I wouldn't overly think the categories. I mean, I think they're obvious where certain entries should go, but I don't think anyone's going to be disqualified if you're in the wrong category this first year out. So I wouldn't, again, overly worry about that. What you should worry about is following the call for entries exactly. So every heading that we've given you, need or opportunity. Don't call it something else. Don't call it background or, context setting. Call it the headline that's actually there, because the judges, again, are looking at that criteria and are going to judge you against the criteria. And the easier you can make it for the judges, the better. The biggest thing I would suggest is allow yourself lots of time. The biggest mistake people make is they rush and they end up missing parts, or they have to go and find them and pull the samples together. And I'm going to suggest, as painful as this sounds, it will probably take you 2 to 3 times longer than you think to actually do the work plan. But it will get easier. Again, this is a template. There's nothing magic about it. It's all about the template and following the framework. So if you're not familiar with the template, allow lots of time. And then I would suggest ask someone outside your department or your organization to read the work plan and flag missing information or flag when the logic is unclear. It's easy when we're in our own organizations to have stuff in our head, but not put it on paper. But somebody outside can read it and say, I didn't get why this was connected to that or why that was important. And you're like, oh, yeah, I didn't make the connection there. And again, there are, sorry, go ahead.
Maureen, just a question. Should I, in my work sample, be including anything that I didn't refer to in my work plan?
I would say include a couple of things. Like let's say you had photos of the event and you want to include them. I would somehow reference them. So even if, let's say in your implementation, let's say it's a fundraising event, your Canadian Cancer Society, you're doing a big fundraising event. In the implementation, maybe you say something like, we held the event at the blah, blah, blah ballroom, see Appendix B. And that's where the photos might be. I would say, I'm going to go back on my first comment. I'd say no, only include things that you reference in the work plan. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. And again, I would make the suggestion that if you've been overwhelmed by what you've heard this morning, and it can be very overwhelming, and perhaps maybe you're not working at this level yet, again, back to the point about using this template as a way to set the stage going forward about how you can do your work or how you might think about entering awards going forward. And if you want to move to the last slide, almost last slide, these are all the resources that we've talked about. So again, the marks of a winner is a section-by-section breakdown of what to include. And I would literally have it open on one screen or beside you as you're writing the work plan. And I would literally just do one section. Well, that's how I work. I do one section, kind of go away, think about it, think of all the pieces that kind of connect, but I would have that marks of a winner document out, because then you're going to know exactly what the judge is looking for, and if you're missing something or if it's too vague, how they're going to mark up or down from there. And then, sorry, I'm reading my own notes, can't read my own notes. And then use the judging form. So the judging form mentions the Excel document there. And once you've written, let's say it's your first kick of the can or the second draft, I would use the judging form and as a filter or as a reference to your first draft to say, can you answer, if you were a judge, could you answer these questions? Have you included everything you need to there? So put yourself in the judge's shoes.
And just a note to everyone that all of the handouts that Maureen is referring to are available in that handout section. So just go ahead and double-click on them now, because when we end the webinar, you won't be able to access them through the webinar, but they will be on the Honors and Awards page on our website.
Yep, and I think they're there now. If not, they will be shortly, yeah. So one of the things I would do is read that sample that's there now. So we have one work sample, one work plan sample. I haven't included the work sample pieces, but Danielle, I think I might send those to you.
Okay,
just
sure.
So we can include them so people can see that the Appendix A, Appendix B reference piece, and there aren't that many, so I'll send those to you. And we hope to include one or two more examples because that was related to a crisis, and that's not an everyday occurrence. So we'll see if we can find one that's a bit more kind of mainstream and include those in the section the next couple of weeks so people can see them there. And I would start there and read it, and you think, yeah, I've got a project that kind of meets this level of rigor and strategic thinking and planning, and I have the measurements. Yeah, I'm going to enter. I'm going to try and do it. That's it. And the last, yep.
We do have a little poll that we were going to do just to find out how many people on the phone were thinking of submitting. So can you see that poll there?
Mm-hmm.
People are responding. I'm just going to give it a minute.
And while we're doing that, if people also have questions, I can send them in to you because we do have time.
Yep. So what's great is that we've got about 53% who say they are absolutely going to submit. About 20% are still not sure, so please do go ahead and enter your questions, and Maureen and I can see if we can illuminate a little bit and convince you that yes, you should be. And then about 30% of you were just here curious, maybe thinking about programs that that might be considered for next year.
Mm-hmm. And just while people are thinking of some questions, I'm not surprised by the 30%, people that are just curious. So I'm hopeful that they're curious both about the awards and about the CAE. So if you're in the CAE process, or you've done it, or you're thinking of doing it, this is a nice tie-in to some of that project work that you're going to have to do. So this will be a bit of a test run for you, or if you've already done that project work and it fits the criteria, why not take advantage of it? Don't need to reinvent the wheel if you already had a good project that you could use there.
And we do have a couple of questions from people on how many award applications we typically receive each year and what we received last year. And I am not sure because I wasn't here last year, but I think we got somewhere around 20. But just to highlight to the people asking, this is a new awards program this year that replaces 2 prior programs, so it might not be an accurate. We're hoping for 30 this year. That would be great.
30 entries, 30 winners.
There you go.
So just if people have other questions, I'll give people full marks for being on this call and even thinking about entering awards, because many of your colleagues will never think about entering awards. So even if you're thinking about it and don't do it this year, you get the 2 thumbs up. And as you can see, the deadline is there, and I know you can ask Danielle lots of questions between now and then. But I would suggest setting a target, if I can give you a bit of a time frame, of reviewing the projects you have maybe in the next 2 weeks. And do that first work plan draft by mid-June and then refine it from there. And that's the most painful part I find, is that first draft, is getting it on paper. Once you kind of have it down, and go from there and allow for lots of time to do that.
And all award winners are celebrated at the annual conference, so which will be in Toronto in October. So yes, to one of the questions, all award winners are recognized at the annual ceremony. You go up on stage, you get your award, we take a beautiful picture of you and send it to you so you can have that gracing your wall. And someone else wants to know if we actually held this webinar to encourage more entries to the program or to increase the quality of the submissions. And Maureen, would you say both to that?
Yes and yes, please.
So I'll give it just a couple more minutes. If anyone has questions, we try to avoid the specific to your program, but since we have a little bit of time, if you have questions, like our earlier question about the mission vision. Oh, here's one. So a pilot program started in 2015, and now it's a regular program. So yeah, someone's asking about a pilot program that was submitted in 2015, and the early results are looking good, and I don't see any reason why you couldn't submit that as an award this year, because you do have some measures, even if they're early measures, right, Maureen?
Yeah, exactly. So you really don't need the project to be finished, but you need to finish a leg of the project or a piece of the project. So that's a perfect example of doing a pilot or a test. And now obviously you're evaluating, and based on that criteria, which you're going to tell us about, you're going to move it to a new program. So it sounds perfect. So you could reference the fact you're going to make that a full-time program or a permanent program, but you don't need to tell us about that permanent program. You're just going to tell us the story about the pilot.
And Maureen, just why did we relaunch the awards? What was the motivation for the Honors and Awards Committee? What was the main goal?
Part of a couple things. One, the categories were very narrow. So I think there were like 2 or 3, like government relations or marketing. I'm trying to remember what they were. The
Communication Awards of Excellence.
Yeah, they were quite narrow. And often, even in our organization, we had programs that never really fit the criteria, but we wanted to enter, but they just couldn't do it. And also we found the numbers were dropping. So there just wasn't a lot of kind of interest. There was a bit of apathy around the program, so we wanted to launch it. And then we wanted to tie it in, I mean, thinking of all the great work that CSAE is doing and making itself more relevant. We thought this is a perfect way to be equally as relevant on the awards program, to tie it into the CAE, because of course we want to encourage more people to go through that process. So this is, I would say, a soft entree into that if you're thinking of CAE. And if you can do an award submission, you're thinking strategically, I would suggest you think about the CAE and actually doing that process, because you're thinking along the right lines.
And something like a new onboarding program for volunteers is something you probably wouldn't have submitted in the past, but now with this new program you absolutely can. And we want to see the best work that happens across the industry. So
yeah. And don't think you need, it has to be, you know, total shiny ball, you know, the shiniest, the coolest, you know, the most expensive. As long as it's a good quality, well thought out, well measured program, it doesn't have to be, you know, it doesn't have to be so unique, but it has to be just well done. So again, volunteer onboarding, I'm sure lots of organizations do it, but are they doing it well? And do they know they're doing it well? So that sounds like a perfect program to do. And think of all the projects that you do at the leadership level, whether that be bringing your new board on board. And do you do, let's say, an orientation manual for them? And let's say you needed to change it. Well, why did you change it? Was there something that wasn't working with the old one? Again, it's that good day-to-day work that we're doing that we should be taking credit for through the awards program.
And as we mentioned, all of the handouts are available on the website, and we'll also make this presentation recording and the slide deck for the session available on the website. So we will give you all the tools you need to have the strongest entry possible. And just one other question about the pilot program was with a small pool of participants, but she's wondering, does that matter, or is the execution what we're really looking at?
Yeah, I don't think it matters. I mean, it matters in the sense if you have a 10,000 member organization, the pilot was with 10 members, well, you know, the scale might be a little bit off, or you could justify why you did it with 10, like maybe this is the pilot of the pilot. But again, just put the context there and give the context. Maybe you're a one-person shop and 10 people is all you could put in a room, let's say, to do a focus group or to pilot. And that's all you could do. That's okay. Just tell that story and give it the context.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Maureen. I think people are going to probably go back with and think about this, and hopefully we'll have more questions. As Maureen mentioned, you can always email me or just email awards@csae.com, and we'll get back to you as quickly as we can. And if we do need to do a follow-up call at some later point because there are so many questions or they're all the same type, we will definitely let you know that.
Good luck, everybody.
Yes, good luck.
And you have nothing to lose by entering, really, nothing to lose.
Exactly. All right, well, thank you so much, Maureen. Appreciate your time, and thanks to all the participants.
Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.